Live from the 607 is the ODPH Entertainment Edition, where we're talking movies, comics, TV, and more. Why don't you join in the conversation? Hashtag ODPH, because here we go. And welcome to another edition of the ODPH Entertainment Edition. I'm your host, Ken M. Sitting across from me this week is the one and only intern himself, Padawan J.
Hello, hello, hello.
Folks, we have a lot to discuss, so let's jump right into it. Hashtag ODPHEE if you're joining us on the social media, and we hope you are. So the big story that we're kicking off this week's show in, there was a little movie casting that happened.
Yeah, and this one caught me by surprise, if nothing else.
It definitely caught me by surprise as well. Jared Leto, who we all know was the Joker in the Suicide Squad and was kind of more or less tied to the DC universe.
Also in 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yes, and a great band, and check out the new album too if you have not. It is quite good. He has decided to join the Marvel universe.
Well, Marvel, asterisk, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, because he is part of the Sony Marvel side of the things. He has now been cast as the lead in the Morbius, the Living Vampire movie.
Okay, why?
So, I was going to say, Pat, you got some thoughts on that?
I'm more confused by this. This, to me, almost seems like, and I know we're going to get into this maybe a little bit later, it almost seems like how DC handles things when it comes to their movie and TV properties. You know, the Marvel side of it, everything's connected. While they may not interact with each other, things are still referenced, things are still influenced on. This almost makes no sense, because outside of appearing as a minor side villain in the Spider-Man 3 video game, and then having a run, you know, here and there in the Spider-Man animated series back in the 90s, I don't think he's that popular.
I don't think he is either, but I'm looking at it from a couple different angles. The first one I'm looking at is, okay, if they wanted to create a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man for Sony, that they don't necessarily tie in fully to the MCU as we know it, this is an okay look. Morbius is kind of, you know, an anti-hero, did have some more popularity in the 90s when they were kind of doing the Midnight Suns family over at Marvel with Ghost Rider, the Darkhold, Night. It's the one they parodied in Blade 3. Night Stalkers, I think, was the group name. Either way, Morbius was more high profile then, and they were kind of making a more focal point to look at like the dark side of the MCU. So he's always been tied to Spider-Man, and he kind of started out as a villain, and then now is like an anti-hero phase. And I can see this movie actually somewhat working in the sense that, okay, Leto is now, I don't know if he's officially done with the DC films. I know that there was talk of doing another Joker film. I believe last I heard the casting was Joaquin Phoenix.
But it's like an origin story, but it might not be connected to this. It's confusing.
It's very confusing what's going on over there. So if he wanted to jump ship to Marvel and go on the Sony side, where they're now, I guess, building off the Tom Hardy Venom movie, and maybe they're going to be kind of coinciding. They're counting
their eggs before they hatch?
Yeah, which I don't necessarily like in that perspective, but if Leto wants to play Morbius, I think it could actually work, because if you take a look at Hollywood right now, and we discussed last week with Mike C. from I Am Horror, the horror genre is kind of having a new renaissance.
Sure.
So if you can spin a very popular vampire that is not Twilight per se, but more MCU, and you can go the anti-hero route, I think that there is a market for it.
Right, but here's my thing with the whole vampire route. What does Sony think? It's 2007? You're like, yeah, vampires still have a place in pop culture, and they are still very popular with certain segments of fans, and I don't have any issue with them. To me, I'm not that big a vampire guy, but that's neither here nor there. But vampires aren't right now in pop culture as popular as they were, say, 10 years ago.
Right, but I think that they can spin it with the Spider-Man universe, no pun intended. I think that they can really say, okay, we have a different character that we really haven't seen in the MCU.
Right.
You really haven't seen a vampire.
No.
Not since, if you were on account of the Blade franchise.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different ball of wax. You are going into this movie looking at it going, okay, we have Jared Leto, who's a high-profile actor. He's going to be playing a character that really, unless you're super into comics, you don't know who he is. Or like we said, the only version you've seen is a video game or a cartoon. There's a lot of wiggle room to kind of go a different direction with the character.
I do understand it from the perspective that it is a relatively unknown character that unless you're a diehard, I've read every single or most issues of Spider-Man, you don't really know who it is. So you're not going into it with preconceived notions as if they were to do, say, DC was to do, say, a Lobo movie. Lobo, fairly popular, very well known. A lot of people would be going into it with preconceived notions of, I want to see X, Y, and Z. Morbius, maybe less so.
No, and I think that's one thing that could help it, because there's a lot of gray area that you can go that you really have to sell this to your average fan. Not the comic fan, because the comic fan will go because it's a comic book movie.
Right.
But for the average fan, it's a vampire, it's a high-profile actor, and if you can tie that into the Venom universe, and if they're going that route, I think that's kind of a creative idea. I don't know how it's going to translate.
I think it's risky.
It is very risky because you're banking a lot on Tom Hardy's Venom to sell itself. And that's going to be your focal point if you're going to have a crossover.
I think the Venom character does sell itself, but that's by and large when he's going to be interacting and facing off with Spider-Man. It's the darkness to Spider-Man's light.
Mm-hmm. You would think that they would go that route, but in case they don't, I'm just throwing this against the wall. If they go this route and they kind of say the Venom is going to be, doing his own thing and they're not going to connect to Spider-Man, which I fully think they are.
Probably.
In some minor aspect, but I think it's going to get connected. Morbius might be connected as well. But I think they're going to be kind of on the outside, and they're going to look at the fringe area of the MCU there. That they might have some other characters that they might be able to use in the Spider-Man universe that's not connected and maybe do their own, which, like I said, I think there's some potential to do. I don't know how it's going to translate per se, but I think that you have a character that you can definitely grow with and see where it goes, and I think there's a genre for him.
No, there definitely is. I mean, it's just all so confusing to me because I saw the casting and I'm like, wait, they want to do a Morbius movie? Like, the last I'd heard was they wanted to really, they've been banking on doing a Sinister Six movie for 10 darn years. Yeah. And I thought they were going that route with introducing Venom, and then they were going to go a whole different route. I'm like, all right, they're going to do Sinister Six. Okay, fine. But then they go, oh yeah, we're going to do Morbius. What?
Well, I think they're doing the Sinister Six with Spider-Man. And I think that, as we saw with the casting of Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio.
Right.
They are having at least, I believe, 4 characters they've introduced between Homecoming and now announced for Far From Home.
Yeah.
In that mix. All right, well, you can just do the final 2 in the last movie if that's the route you want to go. So I think they're avoiding the Sinister Six involving Venom, which I think is a good look. Because if you really are trying to make standalones and you're really trying to, I'm not saying create distance between the MCU and what you're doing, but I think if you're really going to try creating your own universe, you have to really do it without crossing over. If you take characters that are really not high profile and you can make them into something, I think that's a great idea. I just don't know how the execution is going to be, because when you talk to, even the most diehard comic fans, unless you read Spider-Man or you've read the Morbius run rather, you don't really know who his villains are.
See, I think this can work in one way, and this is drawing comparisons in my head to the Star Wars spin-off movies where I'm running through some minor characters in Star Wars that, while it would be cool to see them in a movie, I'm not 100% sure on how it would do. So I'm seeing comparisons there. I think it would work in the one aspect that they could get away with it if they don't want to do a Spider-Man appearance in said movie because of rights and who's got what and issues. Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, I don't think Spider-Man has much to do with his origin or turning into a vampire.
No, he really doesn't.
So you can do it in the aspect of, you can somehow connect it to the Marvel universe or the comic universe or whatever you want to call it, and get away with not having Spider-Man in there.
I think it could work because if memory serves me right, and I'm not looking at a computer as I'm talking right now, if memory serves me, he is a classmate of Peter Parker.
Okay.
And is doing experiments, I think, for like a blood disease or something in that variation, and that's kind of how he gets his powers. It's not traditional vampirism.
Right. So, I mean, you could take out the Peter Parker aspect of it, throw him in Transylvania, and boom, there you go.
Or no, I'll even give you another scenario. What if the company that is experimenting on the Venom symbiote, he's working there?
That could be something you see in the background of Venom that, how in some of these movies they like to throw Easter eggs or little things. I know Guardians of the Galaxy is full of them.
Oh, yeah.
James Gunn likes to talk that the biggest Easter egg of Guardians 2 still hasn't been found. That's definitely something that, if they're doing a walking shot with Tom Hardy walking across the screen through whatever the building's name is going to be or the company's name is going to be, and you see scientists working on stuff and they're working on their own little projects or side projects, that could be something you see that, vampires scribbled on a Post-it note on a computer screen or something.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it. And I think that, like we said, the movie has a lot of potential. If they do a non-Spider-Man universe, That's kind of intriguing.
It's risky.
Because what other characters would you involve? Now, that is going to be the question we're going to have to see down the road. I know that there is talk of doing a Silver Sable and Black Cat movie. I don't know if that one would be tied into that or if that's going to be a separate, more
That'd be interesting.
Spider-Man interest. I know that that's been talked about a lot.
Yeah, off and on, a couple of years.
Yeah, so depending on where you want to go with that. And plus, there's enough Spider-Man villains that, I mean, he has arguably the best rogues gallery this side of Batman.
Yeah.
That there is...
Most memorable, I'd say.
Yeah, there is plenty of villains or anti-heroes or antagonists, however you want to define it, that they can pull from. And I think that if they pair it up right, they can actually do something. If they really want to go the horror route with it, I think all the better, because as we're seeing right now, and as we've talked in past episodes before, we've had the New Mutants movie, and I know we were really excited when we saw the trailer, and albeit we don't know the status of it currently.
Not looking good.
It wasn't, the last I heard it was not looking good.
Because here's, in slight side note with that, something I read today, 20th Century Fox is going to San Diego Comic-Con to show off movies. You want to take a guess what they're bringing?
Shoot.
Predator. And that's it. They're not bringing Dark Phoenix. They're not bringing New Mutants. They're bringing Predator.
Now, would this tie into the movie deal with Disney if that's going through? Or?
Quite possibly. Because last I read, the shareholder vote on the Disney sale of the Disney buying Fox was scheduled for the 27th of July.
Okay, so obviously, I don't think they want to unveil something if it's not going to come to fruition, which would make sense.
Yeah.
That honestly would make sense. But if Sony is trying to do this and they're trying to, not hold up their own progress, because if they can do this, if they establish Venom and they establish Morbius, there's a lot of room that they can go with. And I mean, honestly, I can't remember seeing a horror, superhero, anti-hero, whatever you want to define it as, universe where I'm not going to say they're going to be like the Dark Avengers. I mean, there's already been a comic of that. But
I mean, they might have tried to with Blade, but it didn't work out for them.
No, I mean, Blade 3 was kind of interesting, and I mean, it wasn't one of my favorite ones. I mean, I love Blade 1. Blade 1 is incredible. But I don't know where they would go with it. I mean, if they decide to make like an anti-hero team, I don't know how they would define it. I'm even trying to think of like names of teams from Marvel that they could actually spin into it.
Revengers. Oh wait, it's taken.
Yeah, that's taken too. I know the Midnight Suns. That's a Ghost Rider thing. Or Spirits of Vengeance. I mean, they
could just come up with something on the spot.
They sure could if they want to go that route. I mean, if they want to tie everybody together. But overall, in closing, though, I think it's a good casting. I think there's a lot of potential to be had. But let us know what you think. Hashtag ODPHEE. What's your thoughts of Jared Leto jumping ship to Marvel? We want to know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward, no steps back.
Hey, this is Vince the Common Man Ciatoy, local MMA fighter, telling you to keep on listening to the ODPH, the 607's up-and-coming newest podcast.
We knew right where we'd be, floating on the airwaves, you see. It's a heartbreak, soul-shaped radio attack. Taking 4 steps forward and no steps back. We knew right where we'd be.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this week's ODPH Entertainment Edition. And we're talking about our new favorite show.
Cloak and Dagger.
Absolutely, on Freeform, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. So we got to recap. Things are picking up. And
just a bit.
Dare I say, they're giving Dagger, played by Olivia Holt, so much to do on the show.
Which makes sense, because you take a character who, it's the little girl who's a ballet dancer and has big aspirations and big dreams. She's got a lot she needs to go after.
She is, and she's really taken upon herself. I mean, after like how crazy last week's episode was with her ending, and now she has a new refound focus to take down Roxanne Oil by herself. By all means,
good luck with that.
Yeah, which she's just going at it by herself. I mean, they are giving her so much to do, and like we said, Olivia Holt, who plays Dagger on the show, is absolutely crushing the role. Absolutely crushing it.
No doubt.
I feel bad because I don't think they've given Aubrey Joseph enough to really kind of build his character off.
See, I think he is more of a slow burn character, whereas it's going to tie back into I think it's going to tie back into Roxanne at some point, but just we don't see it yet because that is a much deeper and there's a lot more to his story.
Absolutely. And we have been talking some spoilers on the show, so if you haven't seen Cloak and Dagger yet, pause this episode, go download, watch, get caught up, because here we go. So as we start the episode, I mean, Dagger is picking up the pieces from her mom's now dead boyfriend's law office where he's putting together the case against Roxxon. And she's really kind of putting together faces and trying to see if there's something going on. In fact, to the point where she actually sneaks into Cloak's school to hack into the computers.
Which, that kind of confused me. Why do you got to go into Cloak's school for that? You can't just use a regular computer for that?
Well, I think since she's a runaway, I don't think she's in school. And I think that she needs like an access point to get in there. So
what, local library won't work?
I don't know. I mean, I think she's just trying to do it to work with Cloak. Because, I mean, obviously she knows that there's a connection going on. Not so much between them, but I think that she knows that the death of his brother and the death of her father is
it's like they're seeing each other
slowly coming together.
They're seeing each other way more than they should be, and it's more than just they're walking down the same street.
Yeah, and now it's getting to the point where Cloak is actually talking with Detective O'Reilly about the Detective Connors and what's going on with the drug dealing that he's now allegedly tied into. Ugh. So now there's some more history coming out about what's going on in that universe.
Skeletons and whatnot.
Yes. So it's sort of now they think that there is something going on between this drug ring and how like the Connors rose up in the vice ranks, and O'Reilly is now putting herself in danger because now she's becoming a target because she's asking a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. So she's raising a red flag. But Cloak is also noticing a picture, and he actually meets up to somebody that knows his now dead brother. And it's kind of like, oh, yeah, if he was still alive, we'd be working together, and there's stuff going on that Cloak is, I'm not really thinking he's thinking there's too much to it. I think he's just reminiscing that, this is a family friend.
Yeah.
So he kind of leaves to go back to do his basketball game. Meanwhile, Dagger is piecing the puzzle together, and she's spying on the Roxxon guy, and she actually fakes being an IG influencer or model or something.
That's a thing.
To sneak into a party, and she's actually using her light powers where she can see people's hopes to absorb their essence to see who's actually corrupt and who's actually on the level. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a weird scenario. It's very well done, but she actually finds out that stuff's going on. Now, meanwhile, Cloak is doing the big basketball game, which you've been following his character. Like, that's the major storyline, I guess, going on there. And during the game, when she's activating her powers, his are kicking in too. So he is completely off his game. But as he's getting in the game, when he's bumping into players, he's kind of finding out that there's something going on with that game that he's involved in too, which is kind of just weird in its own right. But it's very well done.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if like his powers were like super strength and super speed and all that. It'd be helpful, but not exactly helpful when you can phase through stuff.
Yeah, and especially now they're absorbing people and their memories. So they're seeing the light and the dark of each person's character, which is just, it's very well done. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it, because they have a very unique power set in the comics. So to see it come to life and how they're interpreting it for a freeform show, I think it's been great.
Oh, no doubt.
But now they're doing where Tandy is going through and she's absorbing, and she recognizes the guy that's involved with her dad's death, and she's still doing digging into the guy's character. And there comes this weird, it's like a dream sequence. I always refer to it as like the astral plane, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But she absorbs it, and she sees like dead bodies floating in by this oil rig,
which is just creepy.
Yeah, and she sees this guy taking money and from them, and it's just kind of weird how it kind of plays out.
So this ain't Grand Theft Auto 5.
No, and this is kind of just where it just kind of builds from there. And meanwhile, like Cloak, he knows something's going on with that game, so he actually throws the game on purpose.
No, that went over real well.
Yeah, to help the people that were, I don't know, something was going on. It was just kind of weird how that would happen. But it ends with Cloak teleportating, and he finds Detective Connors with the guy that knew his brother, and they're working together.
Awkward.
So now going into it, I mean, they built up, there is just, everything's connected, which I mean is such a Marvel thing.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of weird to see that now slowly this, what just seemed like a random occurrence, is now just like this entangled web. And they're doing a nice slow burn on it. Mm-hmm. And I think for Cloak's character, I really kind of want to see a big payoff, because I think that he just hasn't gotten a chance to really, spread his wings and really delve into it. I know that there's, like I said, in comparison, Dagger, you've seen just such an emotional range go through. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing against how Cloak has been portrayed. I mean, Aubrey Joseph has been playing a very good character.
Yeah.
It's just, I'd like to see more get done with him. And I think now we're slowly starting to see that happen, that there's just more to it than meets the eye.
No, it definitely feels like the pressure, so to speak, is building, and it's going to end explosively.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, I think for this show, coming in the shadows of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Netflix is another home run with Luke Cage just recently. how this is standing on its own and it's carving its own niche, I think is very unique.
Yeah.
Because I think when it first came out, everybody was like, okay, it's this, kind of teen drama. Don't really know these characters. They have done such a nice job establishing them, and especially Dagger. Because Dagger, you just kind of sit and you almost don't know what she's going to do.
No.
Every episode, because you think something's going to go on, and she just completely 180s it. And I think, like I said, Olivia Holt's been crushing it in the role.
No doubt.
So I'm waiting to see what's going to happen more. But let us know what you think is going to happen for next week's Cloak and Dagger. We want to know. What's your thoughts on the show? Hit us up. # ODPHEE. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Mike C. from I Am Horror. You're listening to the ODPH, the most killer podcast on the planet.
Coming back, time to talk a little. Marvel Studios is returning to the big screen this weekend on the ODPH Entertainment Edition.
And in the smallest way possible.
Absolutely. The biggest surprise hit, in my opinion, of all Marvel
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I got to admit, when this movie was originally announced the first go-around, I was like, there's no way anybody's going to watch an Ant-Man movie.
And I know I had to ask you, one, who is Ant-Man? And two, what are his powers? And you told me, and I go, wait, really?
I mean, I thought, okay, this proves Marvel can make a movie with any character and it will work. Anyone. I'm not saying TV shows because we proved Inhumans does not work.
Yeah.
But the fact that they actually made Ant-Man, let alone it's Scott Lang, it's not Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man.
Yep.
Who has, more of a a very messy history in comics.
Yeah, it's not clean.
No, but Scott Lang, number 2, and they've actually made it work. Paul Rudd is the hero that we did not know we needed, but we are very lucky to have him.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he is just...
He crushes it.
I mean, he just makes that role. I don't think anybody else could play it and actually pull off.
No.
And now we're talking about an Ant-Man sequel, let alone they're adding the Wasp to it.
Which is seeming very interesting.
I mean, this is like some old school Avengers talk here. I mean, this is just crazy for me to say we're actually going to see this. And I'm super excited about it because this is actually going to take place after Captain America Civil War.
Yep.
This is going on during Infinity War.
I think it's probably before, if not a little bit into.
Yeah, a little bit into, because he's not involved in Avengers Infinity War, which
he's referenced.
He's referenced, and I think Hawkeye is too.
Yep, they're both referenced. I forget who. Somebody asks at one point, where's Hawkeye and Ant-Man, and they're both under house arrest.
Yes, because of the actions that happened during Civil War, and I know that the last we saw them, they were getting busted out of the Raft prison by Captain America and company.
Right, and you see in the trailer... I think it was the first trailer that came out, an ankle bracelet or something is getting put on Scott's ankle.
Yes. So as you're seeing that, now they kind of go into the movie, and we're just kind of doing a rough idea of what's going to happen. The one thing I'm really excited to see is they're adding Evangeline Lilly, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as Hope Van Dyne, and she is going to be, a major point of this movie.
Oh, yeah. And I'm interested to see the back and forth between the two, because there's the one scene in the trailer where she's going and doing work someplace, and he's talking about powers with, what she gave her and all that, and he goes, "Oh, you gave her lasers?" And he goes, "Well, were they not available when you made my suit?" No, they were. Yeah,
well, I think that as she's established her character, the Wasp is an actual, can handle herself and is a real true superhero that can do it well. Meanwhile, I think the jury is still out if Scott Lang is perceived as a real hero amongst his peers,
right,
so to speak, at this point.
This will be real interesting to see, because it looks like it won't follow the traditional trope of a second superhero movie where they introduce I don't know if sidekick's the right word, but a co-superhero, a co-star, who is fighting alongside said hero, where they kind of get thrown into the role and they didn't quite want it, and they're novices at this, and they got to get shown the ropes, and they're bumbling and stumbling their way through, and they're, oh, darn it, that bad guy got away because you don't know what they're doing. Oh, shucks. No, it seems like she's a legitimate, I can handle myself, I can take care of myself, let's just go do this.
And if you know the history of the character of the Wasp involving the Avengers, it's been the original Janet Van Dyne, who is actually going to get introduced in this movie as Michelle Pfeiffer, which I think is very cool to see.
Yeah.
And if you know her character, I mean, I think at one point she was chairman of the Avengers, or chairwoman, should I say.
Yeah.
But she was the leader at one point. And I think for her character, I mean, has a very interesting history involving the Avengers. I mean, recently, I think they brought her back, or they've introduced a new Wasp. I really haven't been following up to date.
They probably do, because the thing you typically find with a lot of Marvel movies, when they're getting ready to do one, or there's one coming out soon, they will like to reintroduce certain characters or bring them back if they haven't been around for a while.
No, I know that she was apparently killed off during Secret Invasion when that comic storyline was coming on, and I know that recently I heard that she was brought back, albeit it was I'm not exactly sure how it happened. I did not read the issue. I'll be very honest with everybody about it. But I think that she is now back in the Marvel Comics universe, and they've also introduced her a daughter of Hank Pym, I believe Nadia Pym, who is currently the new Wasp in the MC comic line. So going with that, though, I think this movie has got a lot of potential. It looks fun.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I noticed with the special effects and everything we've kind of seen so far, it is very lighthearted. Which
say they supersize a Hello Kitty Pez.
Yes, which, I mean, they show the power of Pym particles. Try saying that 3 times fast.
I'll pass, thanks.
They really show how Hank Pym's science expertise is really coming to play on here. And obviously, he is one of the old school heroes that is tied into the Howard Stark era of the real beginnings of the MCU, I guess, if you want to go into the back history of the movie timeline. And they really show how his science is working and how he's really kind of developed himself into, he's really trying to see Scott Lang be the best he can be. And he's really, I guess, putting him through the ringer, so to speak, because we all know Hope Van Dyne is the one that is the true hero. So to see Scott Lang's journey from being a petty thief to now he is a hero, and now he's trying to find the balance going on, I think is a really interesting dynamic.
Oh, without a doubt. It's definitely going to be something interesting to see, just from where he goes from Civil War to wherever this movie ends up going. That'll be very interesting to see.
And plus, one thing I think is very interesting is the main villain of this is Ghost.
Yep.
Who, if you haven't followed the comics, is an old Iron Man villain that has had a recent makeover, so to speak, in recent years.
Okay.
That is now a drastic difference from when you saw him in the movies or him in the comics to how he is in the current timeline of the comics. And this time he is actually a female.
Okay.
In the movie.
See, every time I see the Ghost villain in commercials, because I played so much Destiny game, I keep seeing a hunter from Destiny. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google Destiny Hunter, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, I think the mask they use now is very similar. I mean, that's just how it is in the comics of recent years. But I do like it that they've actually now made him into a her.
Yep.
For the movie role. Hannah John Kamen is playing Ava/Ghost, and I really like how they're going to kind of portray that she is now trying to steal the secrets of Pym particles and basically sell them to the highest bidder, trying to manipulate them to however.
Which makes sense. I mean, when you have something that, there's the one scene in the trailer where it looks like it's because this takes place, San Francisco?
Yes.
There's a San Francisco Bay, and there's something going on with like a tourist ferry. What's going on, we can't quite tell. But it requires Scott Lang to go ginormously huge to the point where he's standing on the floor of the San Francisco Bay, and he's going, "Oh my gosh," or something. Like, when you have a power that can do that, there are going to be a lot of people with some not so good interested.
Well, I mean, that's one thing about Hank Pym's character, and if you read the comics, he's gone through many different names and many different characters where he's been Goliath at one point, and he's been Ant-Man and then Yellow Jacket, and I mean, just in recent years, I mean, I think he's been like Jean Grey, he's just been Hank Pym.
Sure.
But I think that in his character, though, you see a lot of variance of growth, and I think there's so much interesting dynamic to him. I mean, he's, like I said, his comic history is just very, very interesting. I mean, messy at some points, very messy at some points.
Oh yeah.
But I think for the movie itself, though, I am excited to see it because I think this is going to be a sleeper hit. I think that everybody is going into it with how epic Avengers was. That I don't want to say the pressure's off Ant-Man, but I don't think that everybody's kind of holding it in the same regard. That I think they're looking at it going, okay, this is Ant-Man. It's going to be a fun film. It's going to be Marvel. Maybe we're going to find out some connection to the Avengers Infinity War.
You will.
Okay, Pads.
You will.
Pads unofficial prediction.
Well, no, that's not a prediction. That's a fact. I don't know specifics. All I know is I know somebody who's seen the movie was at the premiere out in LA, San Francisco, wherever it was. From what he told me, and I didn't ask him to tell me any specifics, but from what I understand, if you haven't seen Infinity War, you shouldn't see this movie before you see Infinity War.
That's interesting And it'd be kind of a nice tie-in because we're not going to have another Marvel movie, if I'm not mistaken, for the rest of 2018.
I believe not, because they do their 3-year, and this would be number 3.
So they're going to be done for the rest of the year. And then the next movie we have...
Which is a shame, because there's usually one out around my birthday, and I always enjoy that little gift from Marvel.
There usually is in November. I think we're going to have another Netflix show by then, so I mean, maybe that'll tie into it. My fingers crossed it's Daredevil Season 3.
I'm hoping so.
But we'll have to wait and see about that. But either way, I think the expectations for Ant-Man, I just want it to be a fun film. I mean, if it's going to be a Disney film, so to speak, as I've been very critical of the last few, that I think there's been a lot of more humor in the MCU films than recent years.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have some fun with this one, and I think for Ant-Man, it works.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this as well. I'm going in not as blind as I was the first one, but almost as blind as the first one, because I really don't know what's going to happen with this, because my knowledge of Ant-Man is not that extensive. It's not that deep, so I can't really go into it, as I did maybe with Winter Soldier, going, all right, we're getting Bucky Barnes, we're getting the Winter Soldier, all right, I'm kind of expecting this, that, or the other. I'm kind of going to this in the dark going, all right, I'm interested to see where they go with this.
And the one thing I like especially is they're borrowing other villains, and they're kind of now making him a rogues gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. I think Ghost is a perfect one if you want to go against him. It just makes sense.
The power differences offset each other perfectly.
Yeah, so it's going to be real interesting to watch. I'm excited to see it. But more importantly, what's your feelings on Ant-Man and the Wasp? We want to know. Hashtag it. ODPHEE. We're going to take a quick break, come back with those one-shots. You are listening to the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour Entertainment Edition.
Hey, this is Brian Wolf from Fair City Fire. You are listening to ODPH, the greatest podcast in Binghamton.
Woo!
Hot lips touching, cool thighs feeling, shudder running up, her spine spinning. Long day to a long night, but I'm not stopping till I get it right.
Coming back to close out this week's ODPHE with those one-shots. Pat, what you got?
Well, a bit of exciting news for me personally. It was announced on their Facebook page this past week. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is coming back for season 13, baby.
Oh, boy.
Oh, those degenerates have been gone for too long in my life, and I need them back. Now, the interesting thing with this is, of course, what is going to be happening with Dennis. He said he was leaving the bar to be a family man in the Dakotas someplace. So what's this mean for him? What's this mean for the group? I'm guessing more of the same.
Yes, Always Sunny is one of those shows that it's pretty much the same premise, but it always delivers.
And you think they can't get any lower or do anything worse than what they've already done, and they continually prove themselves wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, every season they've gotten better and better, and it's just one of those shows that, like, okay, you think they've now hit the point where it's like, okay, there's going to be a decline, and they haven't found it yet.
No, it's one of those shows that if you go and watch it, you start on season 1, you're like, there's no way this is going to last. And they're going on to season 13, and
Wow.
they're already greenlit for season 14.
I mean, it's great for them because, I mean, you don't hear too many shows making it past season 5 anymore.
No.
I mean, it's one of those weird things that to have longevity, especially in their format, that they're still going strong and they're still...
I'd say it's a 30-minute comedy where essentially the premise is it's a group of friends who own a bar in Philadelphia, and they come up with wacky ways to make money.
Yeah. And,
some of which aren't entirely legal.
Yeah, and they're just, so over the top that you just can't help but laugh, and you just have to have a very unique sense of humor to fully appreciate Always Sunny. When is it on?
It's coming out September 5th.
On FX?
Yeah, FXX.
Yep, that's right. I always forget there's multiple FX networks.
Yep. Also, a little interesting thing came across the Facebook newsfeed that kind of caught me by surprise. We're coming up on the 10-year premiere of Breaking Bad.
Wow.
Yeah, which I'm like, oh, well, at first I was like, wait, 10 years? Really? No, not 10 years since it aired, but 10 years since it first came on. And of course, looking back on that show, one of my top 10, if not top 5 favorite shows of all time, because for its time, it was just so groundbreaking. Because you look back at TV in that time, sure, there was, some episodes of some shows where drugs were involved, but there was never a show on cable TV where drugs were the main focus from start to finish.
I think it just goes to the quality of the writing that, Vince Gilligan,
yeah.
And company did. And when you have Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul and company just knock it out of the park each episode and really encompass, the not so great spotlight they're in.
No.
Because, I mean, honestly, when you break it down, no pun intended, it's not a happy show.
No, and it's not a happy ending.
No, absolutely not. I will say, though, for me, it is probably the strongest final season I think I've seen with a TV show.
Yes.
And especially when they did the mid-season cliffhanger.
Oh, my Lord have mercy.
Where they did a slow burn about how Bryan Cranston's character was being so smart and so one step ahead of his DEA brother-in-law.
Yep.
That when finally Hank put it together and they ended the season. And
it was in the simplest way possible. It was on a book that was in a bathroom.
Yeah. And it was just so, like, I mean, that's just one of the things about Breaking Bad. It's just so simplistic in its delivery, but it's so
I'll say because this was a, Bryan Cranston's character was just so smart and so methodical. Like, if memory serves, when he started taking over the meth business, making, selling, and bringing in all the money, if memory serves, he was running the money. Him and Saul Goodman were running the money through like 4 shell companies or something like that, just so it wouldn't get tied back to them in any way, shape, or form. So these are, a couple of guys who, they know what they're doing. They're not idiots. There's the one train heist scene where they need to steal the chemical to help make more meth than they've ever made in their meth making days. And then he comes up with the way to like siphon the chemical out, but at the same time replace it with water so that the sensors in the train don't trigger anything's wrong. Like, this is a guy who, it's very high level, high thinking, high IQ stuff. And he gets thwarted and found out by a book on the back of a bathroom.
Well, it just goes to show, I mean, as the show's premise is, I believe he is diagnosed with cancer at the time. He's a high school science teacher.
Yeah, he's a high school science teacher. He gets diagnosed with cancer, and he goes into meth making as a way to make money so that his family is set for when he inevitably dies. Because I don't remember what type of cancer it is. All I remember is it's like, I think it's stage 4.
It's somewhere around there, and just as the show progresses from where it starts to where it ends, and
it's such a trip.
You just see the evolution of just a character and just the layers it goes through.
It's like, because you look back at the start of season 1, I forget the character's name, but there's the one guy that Jesse and Bryan Cranston's character kill, and they've got to do something with the body. And they're like, oh, well, they come up with the way where like they use the chemicals or whatever to dissolve the body, and neither one of them want to do it. Neither one of them have got the stomach for it. You get to the last few seasons, and it's like they will stand there in front of somebody, shoot them point blank in the head, and not give a what.
It's just one of those weird shows that is so well written, and the characters really encompass, I mean, the not so glamorous life.
And it's so many iconic scenes. I mean, I am the one who knocks.
Oh, that is,
say my name.
Yeah, when you hear that for the first time, and after you've been watching the show, it resonates.
Oh,
you're like,
that happened.
Holy.
That happened, and I saw it. I threw my fists up in the air and just go, yes.
Yeah, when that happens, that is just such a moment on the show. And then, as we were saying about when Walt finally gets, discovered.
Yep.
And then it's in real TV time. This was a 9-month gap.
I want to say it was like a year and a half.
Yeah, it was a gap
from
months.
Yeah, from when they did the mid-season cliffhanger. It was like a year and a half, and it was one of those moments where, like, if you went on Twitter, you see these moments every now and then, sporting events, current news, like if something big happens in news, it was one of those moments where I remember looking at all of Twitter was simultaneously freaking the you-know-what out there. Like, wait, we got to wait how long for this to come back?
Yeah, this was one of those moments that you just watch. And just as it's going through and the progression, I mean, when Walt has a confrontation with Hank and then it starts all nice and then he's just like, tread lightly. And just immediately flips the switch. It just builds the tension up. And as you see how it progresses and how he builds his castle and just everything comes crumbling down around him to where the series ends, and just how I think every character except one, because on the post show I did not think about one of Saul Goodman's bodyguards.
Oh yeah,
what happened with him?
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody else had their moment. Everybody else had their time where their story was explained and they went. And it was just one of those series that it resonates for the right reasons of just how well it was produced and acted and written. And the other side, it just resonated, just how real something can get when it goes completely wrong.
Right, and of course the flip side of that is now season 4, I believe, of Better Call Saul has been announced and is coming back. I want to say it's August 4th, I want to say.
And that's just as
Early
quality.
August.
That's just as quality as Breaking Bad.
Oh, without a doubt. It when you first watch it, it might seem a bit of a slow burner, slow to start up, but rewatching it, because it's been a while since season 3 ended, it's not really that slow of a start off. It kind of kicks into gear right from the get-go.
Yeah, it's just one of those shows that it still has the same feel of Breaking Bad, but it's a different direction altogether.
And it definitely has that, knowing what happens and looking back on Better Call Saul as I rewatch it and prep for season 4, it does have some of the same tones and resonances that Breaking Bad had, where it's got an innocent start and it's got a simplistic start. It starts off as a guy he's just trying to make it as a lawyer, trying to get out of the, I'm just the guy they call if you can't afford an attorney, to where he ends up in Breaking Bad being Saul Goodman.
This is one of those shows, if you haven't seen it, you definitely need to go check out. If you have Netflix, it's on there.
Yep.
You can go to your local movie store, wherever you go buy your DVDs and Blu-rays and 4Ks, and go get it. It is definitely worth the watch.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for my one-shots, I got Preacher is still as crazy as ever on AMC, Sunday nights, 10 p.m. It's not for everybody, but if you read the books, it is following it to the letter. It has not pulled any punches. It's still as wild as you would imagine as reading the comic. And that's all I can really say about that. And my last one shot, and definitely go check the show out, too. Sunday nights, 10 p.m. AMC. My last one shot this week, though, is in comic news. A book is coming out, rather. I almost said a movie because it's kind of been built like a movie. Batman 50 is coming out, DC Comics. Tom King is writing it, and is the build up for the wedding between Batman and Catwoman. If you have been on the internet, there are spoilers out for it, but I am not going to spoil it for you, because I don't like doing that with comics until well after they've come out. So this being said, I'm a huge fan of Tom King's writing in comics. I think his Mr. Miracle has been on point. He's done a wonderful job with Batman since Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's run, because where Snyder and Capullo instilled the fear into Batman, Tom King has put the man into Batman and made him question his mortality, his life, and the direction of where Bruce Wayne is going for the first time that I think I've really seen in a comic.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously with the whole idea of the whole marriage to Catwoman is kind of crazy. And if you follow any comic marriage, it never ever goes right. I think very few times it's happened that one has actually gone off without a hitch. I think originally with Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson, before everything went crazy and the whole we're going to erase it from time continuum and omit and that whole drama, I think for the most part they've always been highly climactic. And if you've been following King's run on Batman, he has done an excellent job of building the stat quo that Batman is now marrying one of his rogues gallery, so to speak, because it's always been a very murky history between Batman and Catwoman. And obviously the reaction between his superhero allies and his Bat family, and to where it builds, where the Joker is now involved, and just how well it's done. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything. I do know about things that do happen with it, and I just don't want to do it on the show. But I highly recommend reading the issue and reading the run, because King has done an amazing job with it. If you have the chance, definitely pick it up.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's obviously grown his profile up tremendously from where he started, but I can't speak highly enough of his Batman run and his Mr. Miracle run, which is currently going on right now. It's been a year-long series, too. So if you got the chance to pick it up, definitely go get it. You won't be disappointed. And definitely let us know what you think of Batman 50 if you should pick it up.
And, of course, one thing before we go, I almost forgot to mention, it is also coming up on the 10-year anniversary of Star Wars, The Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, the movie and the animated series, which ran for a good number of years, some of the best story writing done. Highly recommend you go watch it. Of course, they're having a panel at San Diego Comic-Con. Looking back on 10 years, Dave Filoni's going to be telling stories. And if Dave Filoni is telling stories, I'm going to be listening, because that's one guy. If you listen to him in interviews and you like Star Wars even a little bit, you can listen to him talk for hours. Highly recommend the show. Now, if you're sitting there going, well, Pat, it's a Star Wars cartoon show. It's for kids. How can I watch it? I can tell you how, and I can convince you how in 3 episodes. Season 3 episodes, I believe it's 15, 16, and 17 of Season 3. That's Overlords, Altar of Mortis, and Ghosts of Mortis. Arguably 3 episodes of it's one arc, one story arc that is some of the best story writing Star Wars has ever done. Ever.
That's a bold statement. That is a very bold statement. But I believe you because you are a Star Wars aficionado here on the ODPH network. So going into that, it's been 10 years of Rebels?
10 years since the Clone Wars.
Or Clone Wars, rather, should I say. That is pretty impressive.
It's crazy to think. Like, I remember going to see the movie in theaters back in 2008.
Attack of the Clones?
No, this was the Clone Wars movie.
Oh, okay.
This was the movie that was the lead-in for the show. Now, the thing with the show is the show is not chronologically in order. It jumps around a bit. There is a list online where one of the guys who's on the Lucasfilm Story Group put together the order of episodes if you want to watch it in chronological order. I recommend you watch it when it came out, the way it came out. And if you want to go back and watch it in chronological order, you can. It's kind of up to you. But I remember going into watching this movie kind of skeptical because it was an animated movie. Anakin was getting a Padawan, which for the time was unheard of. Mm-hmm. Just with the way the timeline and everything was at that point, he never had a Padawan. Never happened. And I remember reading an article in I think it was USA Today or something, where they were like, "Oh, it's a love triangle between Anakin, his Padawan, and his wife." I'm like, "No, he's married, and the one they're introducing is like a 10-year-old child." Yeah. So it was an interesting time, but it was one of those ones that. It was, 5 years, 6 years really of, and longer of, the one character that introduced Ahsoka, voiced by Ashley Eckstein, of what's going to happen to her. Because this is a character who doesn't show up in Attack of the Clones, doesn't show up in Revenge of the Sith, and doesn't show up in anything else that's already come out at that point. It was a 5-year mystery of what's going to happen to her, and it's highly worth a watch.
Definitely check that out, especially if you're in the Star Wars. I mean, I'm kind of more of the mainstream fan, but Pat is the official Star Wars expert here on the ODPH, so if he's telling you to go check it out, and if you're slightly into Star Wars, you definitely need to go see it.
Say all 6 seasons are on Netflix.
So even better. So go check it out this weekend, especially if you're on the East Coast, because it is extremely hot out right now.
Like dangerously hot.
Dangerously hot, so stay cool, pop on some Netflix, pop on some DVDs, your Blu-rays, whatever, but Star Wars... The Clone Wars, 10 years, definitely go check it out. We've given you a lot to go take in this week. So for Padawan J.
Thank you.
I'm Ken M. That's all we got this week on the ODPH Entertainment Edition. We'll see you next time.